Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're going all the way back to the Old Testament,
Okay.
cracking open the book of 1 Samuel chapter 9.
Ooh, a good one.
It is a good one.
Mm.
We're going to be looking at the story of Saul and how he came to be king of Israel.
Yeah. Fascinating story. And it really starts in a rather, normal way.
Yeah, it does. So Saul, he's this young man
Right.
from a wealthy family.
Mm-hmm.
His dad sends him out on a mission.
Uh-huh.
Go find some donkeys. We've lost some donkeys.
Yep.
Go find them.
Mundane task. Right. Like, who would think?
It's so ordinary. You would never think that this is going to lead to him becoming the king.
Right. It's like, how does this even... It's like such a small thing.
Right.
And yet, the story unfolds in such a way that it makes you wonder about those little things that happen in our own lives.
Right. What are those seemingly insignificant moments in our lives that are actually leading to something greater?
Exactly. And that's what makes the story so fascinating. And, just to add to that, they're out searching for these donkeys. And of course, they can't find them.
Right.
And so Saul's servant says, you know what? We should go and find this seer.
Right.
Back then, they called them seers. Now we know them as prophets.
Yeah.
This guy named Samuel.
Right.
Let's go and get some advice because they're lost. They don't know what to do.
They need guidance. They need some direction here.
Exactly. And it's interesting, even back then, they placed a lot of importance on spiritual guidance.
Right.
Right? Because they bring this small silver piece to Samuel as an offering. It was a common practice then to show respect for figures like Samuel, but it just highlights, that cultural importance of seeking guidance from those who are believed to have a connection with the divine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they're on their way to see Samuel. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Here we go.
God had already spoken to Samuel and told him, hey, you're going to be anointing the next king of Israel.
Wow.
And guess who walks in the door?
Saul. Like, how? You can't make this up.
Right. It's wild. It's like, how? It's like God is orchestrating this entire thing. And, it's something that I think is really interesting for us to think about today.
Oh, for sure.
Like, do we believe in that kind of divine orchestration in our own lives?
Right. Is there a plan? Is there, something bigger going on than what we can see?
Right. It's a big question.
Definitely.
And it makes you think about all the different ways that that could play out in our lives, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Samuel knows. God has told him. This is the guy. And then he invites Saul to a feast, and it's not just any old seat at the table. It's like the best seat at the table.
Yeah, the place of honor. It's like he's already treating him like the king.
Right. And he gets like the choicest piece of meat.
Right. The best of everything. Like it's this huge symbolic gesture.
Yeah. It's like a foreshadowing.
Exactly. And they didn't have those big coronation ceremonies back then, right? So this was kind of like the way of doing it. It's like this silent coronation ceremony full of meaning.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. And then after this big feast, Samuel takes Saul aside. It's just the two of them.
That's got to be intimidating.
Right. A little one-on-one time.
Yeah.
It's like a mentor preparing his successor.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of all those stories you hear about, like, these amazing mentors in the business world or in, like, politics or whatever, These people who take the time to really guide the next generation of leaders. It's so powerful.
It is. And I'm so curious. What do you think Samuel told Saul?
Ooh, what did he tell him? I don't know. That's a great question.
Right. I wish we could have been a fly on the wall during that conversation.
Right.
So anyway, talk about a wild turn of events. We started with lost donkeys, and now we have a future king in the making.
It's crazy. It makes you wonder what's hiding in our own everyday lives, Like what seems so mundane right now could be the start of something huge.
That's a great place to leave it for today.
Yeah, let's pick it up next time. So we left off with Saul being, kind of chosen and prepped for kingship.
It's wild. I mean, talk about a plot twist.
Exactly.
Lost donkeys turn into a kingship,
Right. But it's more than just a cool story, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Saul's story is like this framework, It helps us understand how everyday things can become part of something much bigger.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like sometimes you look back and you can see, oh, that's how I got here.
Right. Like
Yeah.
connecting those dots. And sometimes it's not even about the looking back. Sometimes it's about trusting there's something guiding us, even when we can't see the path ahead.
Like having faith, you mean?
Exactly, like faith. Saul's story kind of nudges us in that direction. It's like, what if instead of getting caught up in the day-to-day, we just trusted that those daily experiences were shaping us for something greater?
That's a really interesting way to look at it. But, okay, back to Saul. We've got this guy who seems like he's on the fast track to leadership. But, he's chosen partly because he's this, like, impressive-looking dude, right? Tall, handsome.
Yeah, definitely. But as the story goes on, you realize looks aren't everything when it comes to being a good leader.
Totally. It's kind of a reminder for us, too, right? Like,
Oh.
charisma can only get you so far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to have something more substantial beneath the surface. Integrity, humility.
It's like having a strong foundation.
Right. And this brings us to another important point, which is getting advice and mentorship, like Saul did with Samuel.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like, if Saul had ignored his servant's idea to go find Samuel, who knows where he would have ended up?
Right. Lost forever, maybe, never fulfilling his potential. It's like having wise voices in our lives, they can offer a whole new perspective.
Yeah, they help us see our blind spots, too. It's
Uh,
humbling to admit you don't have it all figured out.
Definitely. And speaking of figuring things out, Saul's story also kind of shows us how important it is to be prepared and faithful in whatever we're doing right now.
Yeah, like even those donkey finding days.
Exactly. He wasn't just crowned king instantly. He had to be ready for that responsibility.
It's like maybe finding those lost donkeys was part of his training, in a way.
Right, like a test of his character. It reminds me of that saying, the only way to do great work is to love what you do.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's not our dream job right now.
Exactly. Doing it with faithfulness and putting in the effort, it builds a foundation for bigger things.
So what you're saying is, even if we don't feel like we're on the path to something amazing, how we handle today matters.
Absolutely. It's about those everyday actions shaping our future selves. But here's the thing, Saul's story also reminds us that we may have our own plans, but there might be something bigger guiding things.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think we might not be completely in control.
I know, right? But also kind of a relief. Like surrendering to the unknown, trusting there's a plan, even if we can't see the whole thing.
Yeah, less pressure to micromanage everything.
Exactly. It's about being open to wherever life takes you.
Okay, so let's recap.
Yeah, good idea.
Saul's journey is packed with lessons, right? From finding purpose in the ordinary to building strong leadership qualities and even finding comfort in knowing there might be a bigger plan unfolding.
It's timeless. These principles still speak to us today. It makes you look beyond the surface and think about the meaning behind your own experiences.
And with that in mind, here's something to think about as we wrap up this deep dive. Okay, so we've been talking about Saul, right?
Yeah,
And how he went from looking for donkeys to being like chosen as king.
right. And all the stuff we can learn from his story, like how even seemingly ordinary events can have a bigger purpose. It makes you think, doesn't it?
It totally does.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, this whole deep dive, here's something to think about.
Wait, shoot.
How do you interpret the whole idea of faith and divine intervention, not just for yourself, but for leaders like all over the world?
Ooh, yeah. That's a question that's puzzled people for centuries.
Right? Free will, destiny, what shapes history, right?
Exactly. It makes you wonder.
It's a question that's probably got like a million different answers.
Right. And maybe that's what makes it so interesting to explore.
Yeah, I think so too. Maybe it's not about having all the answers, but about like being open to the possibility that, there's something more happening, even in our everyday lives.
Right. Like being humble enough to be guided
Yeah.
and, really appreciating those unexpected moments that change things.
Yeah. So as you go about your day, remember Saul. Okay.
And those donkeys.
Right. Don't forget the donkeys. It's a reminder that even the most ordinary things can, hold some amazing potential.
Keep asking questions and, keep diving deep.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
See you next time.